Well, good morning, and to all of you too that are active surveillance pioneers that are watching this. This is truly an honor for us to present this award to Peter Carroll. Peter Carroll is a professor at the University of California, San Francisco, and that's a leading institution that has paved the way with people like Peter Carroll who are paving the way with active surveillance. And I wanted to say, too, that Howard, I wanted to thank you in particular for your nominating Peter. He's a man of great humility, knowing how much he's done for active surveillance. His humility is not necessarily appropriate, but that's the way he's wired. And so thank you, Howard, for nominating him. Howard dodged the radical prostatectomy bullet 14 years ago by going on active surveillance, and I dodged that radical prostatectomy village 20 years ago when it was not called active surveillance, when it was called watchful waiting. So it's still, Peter, that men like the pioneers that watch us and follow us have been able to go on active surveillance. So thank you for that. And we do this. We do these awards both to honor you, but in that honoring, we are really also promoting active surveillance. It's not where active surveillance has not quite gotten to where it needs to be. And so we continue our work in our board, Active Surveillance Patients International Board. I'm the chair of the board. I should have said that at the outset. Is passionate about this, passionate about these awards. We've done, we're very pleased to see that Laurence Klotz is here. He was the first Chodak Award winner. And this year, we gave an award to Mike Scott, who did much in terms of moving active surveillance forward. And we were very pleased to have given the award to the PROTECT trial, and Freddie Hamdy and Jenny from the PROTECT trial. The PROTECT trial, we have the video up. We will have the video up. But that really opened the door for active surveillance. In that trial, what we learned was that active surveillance was basically, in terms of longevity, was as safe as radical prostatectomy or radiation, but did not carry with it all of the side effects. And this award, Chodak Award, was named in honor of Jerry Chodak, who was our former ASPI's former medical advisor, and truly a courageous man who stood up when nobody really thought active surveillance should be that thing. And we're so pleased that Robin, his widow, is willing to donate the award. The award actually was originally crafted by Jerry himself, who was a master glass artisan. And Robin, by the way, I wanted to mention something too about you. Robin has done several different books on grief, and so she has her own identity and her own work that's extremely important. So with that, I don't think there's more that yeah, let me add one other thing that I think is important to say, because this has to do with the issue of anxiety. So we at ASPI have kind of progressed from dealing with overtreatment, a lot of progress there on quelling overtreatment, and we moved on to overbiopsying, much progress on overbiopsying as well. And now we are continued too about over anxiety, and over anxiety's effect on the quality of life, but also over anxiety in terms of causing men unnecessarily to get off of active surveillance. And so we've crafted a term here at ASPI called peaceful vigilance, and what that means for me is, and the board too, we remain on active surveillance, and there's no anxiety on my part and other board members' part, and I think Howard's part too. There's no anxiety. So our quality of life is not impacted by our remaining on active surveillance, not impacted in the least. And so all of you can achieve that. You can achieve a place of peaceful vigilance. So I think with those words, I think I'd like to introduce Robin Chodak. I guess she was going to be next.
Mm-hmm. And notice that Peter Albertsen also has joined us. And
Oh, welcome, Peter. Well, Peter, we'd like to invite you to say a few words as
oh,
a
you sold it
prior
out
word.
before.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want to, no compulsion at all.
Dr. Klotz, you didn't bring the award to Vietnam, I guess.
The award is in a very special place on my desk at home. And just for the record, I mean, I have it, but if perhaps it should be transferred to the current awardee, which I would be more than happy to cooperate with that kind of thing.
It's an interesting idea, but like we're under the gun in terms of time. So Mark, you're going to turn this over to Robin, and
Yes.
and then Robin will turn it over to Dr. Klotz, and maybe Dr. Albertsen can say a few words, spontaneous. And I'll have a few words, and then it's Peter's time, but Peter's in a rush, so we got to roll.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. I'll make this brief, but I would like to say that this award is very special to me because it's honoring my late husband, Dr. Gerald Chodak, and his legacy and what he believed in. Now, he was a man of many, many passions. He loved golf, he loved tennis, he loved cycling, he loved painting, which if you look behind me, you can see one of his paintings. He loved glass blowing, and he loved dancing. And we actually met dancing in Chicago, dancing tango. And that was a love that we both shared. And I knew Jerry had so many passions, and I didn't know him when he started his profession as a doctor, but he was so passionate about medicine. And I know that's what made him a great doctor. But he was also a man of science. And he always wanted what was best for his patients. When he had his practice, he offered, when applicable, watchful waiting, I'm going to say, because that's what we called it back then. And guess what? He was criticized by his peers and institutions, but never stopped Dr. Chodak. He kept moving forward for what he believed in. And as those of you who know him, you know these are true statements about him. And it's interesting because now, decades later, we see that he was on the right path. So this award is meant to keep his philosophies going. And we give it to a doctor who upholds those philosophies. And I read everything about Dr. Peter Caroll, and it was very impressive what you wrote, Howard, and the work that you have done, Dr. Caroll. And so we are grateful for you that you are keeping this momentum going. And you have already received that blue vessel, which is an exact replica of the one. Oh, thank you. Yes. Thank you for holding that up. It's beautiful. And fortunately, Dr. Klotz, you are the only one who has the original made by Dr. Chodak. So what I've done is I have contacted Jerry's class teacher, and he is making these replicas for me so that I can
Okay.
for them as the award, because this award is very special. And so
That's good to know.
I hope, Dr. Caroll, that every time you look at it, that it is a reminder to you that we are grateful to you for what you're doing and advancing active surveillance and doing what is best for your patients, just as Jerry always has done. And we should keep this momentum going and continue on this path unless science proves otherwise. So I thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah.
Dr. Klotz, maybe it's time for you to put in a few words.
Thanks, Howard. So first, let me just echo everything that Robin just said, which I very much reflects my own view of Jerry, who was a mentor to me and an exemplar, and really had very powerful influence on my thinking. And then just to make some brief comments about Peter Caroll, who I have known for my entire career, and Peter very, very much deserves this award, because the battle for acceptance of active surveillance took place in the context of a very strong consensus that all patients who are diagnosed with prostate cancer, even if low grade, should be treated radically with surgery and radiation. And it was obvious to a few of us, and in particular to Peter, that the only way to win this, what seemed so obvious, but the only way to win this battle was with data. And Peter was the master of data, and I think more than anyone else generated a series of studies that examined many facets of active surveillance at a very granular level. Peter is, I think, perhaps the most data-driven individual in the entire field, and has been throughout his career. And that data, and there were other groups as well, including ours, but I think his commitment to the metrics of active surveillance really turned the table. And ultimately, of course, we've seen that there has been not quite a 180-degree turn, but a very substantial acceptance worldwide of active surveillance. So he very much deserves this award, and it is, it's a wonderful thing to see this happen in Jerry's memory.
Well, thanks, Dr. Klotz. Dr. Albertsen, do you want to share a few words as well?
Well, I'll echo exactly what Laurie has said. Peter and I graduated, I think residency is almost the exact same date. And I've known Peter my entire life, and I've had many conversations on active surveillance and PSA testing, et cetera. We faced a lot of headwinds. Gerald Chodak was the first one to face those headwinds and fought ferociously in his New England Journal publications, et cetera, to say, no, the world is somewhat different. So I feel humbled to be able to follow Jerry and work carefully with Laurie and Peter Caroll as Laurie said, to gather the data to begin to sway the public, and specifically our own profession here in the US, that active surveillance made some sense. So Peter, cherish your blue bowl as I do. It is really a memory of Gerald Chodak. I very much appreciate the award I got, and I want to say you are absolutely the person I would think who deserves it going forward. Your work at the UCSF has been remarkable in supporting this concept.
Well, thanks, Dr. Albertsen. I'll say a few words too, and then I'll turn it over to Peter. It's a rare opportunity for us as patients on active surveillance to be able to thank and honor the doctors whose vision and courage changed our lives. If it hadn't been for these three doctors, a few others, we probably wouldn't be meeting in this room, and who knows what side effects we'd be nursing. These doctors faced pushbacks and attacks from the gray eminences in their field and risked their careers because they wanted to do something about the fact that patients were being overdiagnosed and overtreated for a so-called cancer that posed no threat and required no aggressive treatment. This year's recipient of the 2024 Chodak Award is Dr. Peter Caroll, a visionary urologic oncologist who wrote an early editorial for the Journal of Urology highlighting his concerns. It was entitled Prostate Cancer Overdetection, Overtreatment, or Both. I think both. And let me tell you a little bit more about Peter. His story could have been much different. He went to college with the idea of going into creative writing. So his emphasis on data is kind of ironic in some ways. Things changed for him when he met his wife, Laura, and her father, Dr. Joseph Presti, a community urologist in the San Francisco Bay Area. Peter was inspired by his father-in-law to become a urologist and then an academic urologist and researcher. So urology's gain was the world of letters' loss. However, I should point out, it's not that he hasn't devoted words to writing about active surveillance and other topics. He had over 700 articles published in the literature. Dr. Caroll entered urology in the 1990s, a time of dramatic change with the advent of PSA testing, transrectal ultrasound, guided biopsies, the biopsy gun, and nerve-sparing surgery. There was a boom in prostatectomies as the numbers of those diagnosed with prostate cancer was growing rapidly. Even a diagnosis of low-grade prostate cancer was a one-way ticket to a prostatectomy in those days. During Peter's training at Memorial Sloan Kettering, he became increasingly uncomfortable with operating on patients like us with low-grade prostate cancer and got caught up with the idea of not treating us. The late Gerald Chodak, ASPI's first medical advisor, wrote a landmark paper that Dr. Albertsen mentioned in New England Journal of Medicine in 1994, calling for more conservative approach to managing localized prostate cancer. Should mention that among other things, Dr. Chodak helped create was one of the first support groups for patients with prostate cancer of all kinds. Back then, I knew him back then in Chicago. I was a reporter at the Chicago Sun-Times, and Jerry introduced me to the world of urology, never figuring I was going to be a part of it in the way that I have been. But there was a support group in Chicago called Us Too. I'm sorry, I misspoke. There was a support group in Chicago called Why Me, which was a breast cancer support group. And so Jerry and some patients took off from Why Me and created Us Too, which is now part of ZERO. Jerry, as Robin said, Jerry was also an advocate for a more scientific approach in urology. Plus, he was pugnacious. He never walked away from a fight. The next generation of urologists, Dr. Caroll, along with Klotz, Carter, and Albertsen, were leaders in a movement that led to what we now call active surveillance. And as indicated, Drs. Klotz and Albertsen were previous Chodak Award recipients. Dr. Caroll has told me for him, advocacy of a non-treatment approach to low-grade prostate cancer was almost a moral calling. ASPI's awards committee chose Dr. Caroll as the recipient of the Chodak Award for his vision and courage on behalf of patients and active surveillance. The award is a ceremonial bowl modeled on one designed by Dr. Chodak, who is mentioned, included glass blowing among his many talents. Dr. Caroll, you changed our lives. for the better. You showed us that we can live with cancer, once an unimaginable idea, and you help spare us from unnecessary treatment and its side effects. And we thank you, and the floor is yours now, Dr. Carroll.
Well, Howard, thank you very much. And Robin, I want to thank you for this beautiful award. You know, I've been lucky enough to receive many awards over my lifetime, but this is very memorable. It comes from a group that I highly honor. Let me just say a few words, and I also want to acknowledge both Lori and Peter, people I've known for a long time, and I greatly respect. You know, Jerry, although early in his career, was well established in urologic oncology when I entered the field. He was a faculty member at University of Chicago for 22 years. I knew him from afar early on, and then more closely as my career progressed. I have read many things about Jerry online and from others, and a few have said that he was controversial, but from my perspective, I don't remember him being controversial. I remember him being passionate, dynamic, articulate, big believer in evidence-based medicine, whether it be about prostate cancer screening, how to treat advanced disease, or the role of robotic surgery. Also, he was skeptical only when it was appropriate. I think nowadays we need to be skeptical about things and really rigidly test them. I finished my training in '86. So I think, Laura, you were '85. Laura and I were at Memorial about the same time. Jerry started to publish reports about his concerns about early screening. About 1989 was the first one I found. And shortly thereafter, he had, about a year or two later, he had a very article on informed consent. Now, these are foundational principles today, 30 years later, 35 years later. He had the foresight to predict the future with confidence. And he was kind to me, and I learned a great deal from him. Where many of us are lucky to have a few talents, he was a true Renaissance man. And I found out more about him, actually, in preparing for this. Tennis, golf, chess, travel, tango dancing. If you want to see Jerry dancing, I'm sure you know this, Robin. There's a great... It's a great you and he dancing on YouTube. It's really remarkable. I agree with many. He had impressive presence in demeanor and style, always very fashionably dressed. And I remember one time he and I both arrived at a meeting, and he arrived and he had forgotten his tie. I don't know why I remember this, but this is probably at least 20 years ago. I do remember me offering him my tie. But I don't think he took me up on it because I don't think I achieved the sartorial standards that he had. But he will be missed by many. You know, as Howard said, this was almost a moral decision for me. I have done many more surgeries and I have patients on surveillance. So I'm a big believer in surgery, but only when it was appropriate. And I saw after Jerry, Lori, Peter, it would become increasingly evident to me that we were overtreating prostate cancer. And in that article that I published, I said, urology will be judged by this. And it was true. They were judged by this. And it rebounded a bit. But little by little, we added more and more data to this. And now we know a lot more about this field after surveillance. It's no longer watchful waiting, because watchful waiting was not enough watching and too much waiting. Surveillance is a lot different. So thank you very much for this award. I'll treasure it and I'll honor it, and I'll think about Jerry every time I look at this bowl.
Well, thank you, Dr. Carroll. Mark, parting words?
I will share some parting words. Dr. Carroll, you speak exactly of what we believe in at ASPI. Yes, we believe in active surveillance, but we believe in intervention when intervention is called for. And so actually 2 of our board members have had intervention. I'm touched, by the way, Dr. Albertsen and Dr. Klotz, that you saw fit to honor Peter today. And thank you for that. And I also again wanted to, well, I wanted to encourage Dr. Albertsen and Dr. Klotz in particular to take a look at the video that Freddie spoke about the Protect-T study. It's going to be on our website very soon, and it's a primer in that whole process of evaluating why active surveillance was a safe approach. Anyway, thank you all for being here today. It's an honor for us to have the opportunity to present this award. Thank you, Peter.